Something absolutely extraordinary just happened in Washington. A group of 23 senior Republicans, including 3 sitting committee chairmen, have formally declared that Donald Trump can no longer serve as the leader of their party. And this isn't some backroom whisper campaign or anonymous source speculation. This is a signed letter delivered to Republican National Committee headquarters at 11:47 p.m. last night, demanding an emergency leadership vote. When members of your own party start calling for your removal in the middle of the night, you know something catastrophic has just unfolded. Hit that subscribe button right now because you won't want to miss any of the videos I release. So what triggered this stunning late-night betrayal? A bombshell recording surfaced on January 12th, capturing Trump in a private meeting with donors, allegedly discussing plans to use the Justice Department to target Republican lawmakers who refused to back his 2024 campaign challenges. This isn't just another political controversy or internal party dispute. This is the fracturing of a political coalition in real time. And believe me, when 3 committee chairmen publicly break with a former president from their own party, you know something enormous has just detonated. It's honestly hard to believe we're watching senior Republicans unite against Trump in a way we haven't witnessed since the final days of Nixon. Here's the full picture of what's been unfolding. Tensions within the Republican Party have been simmering for months, fueled by Trump's continued attacks on party members who questioned his election claims, his refusal to support certain GOP candidates, and repeated clashes with Senate leadership over legislative priorities. But everything escalated, according to reports from January 12th, when an audio recording was leaked to multiple news outlets showing alleged direct threats against sitting Republican members of Congress. The recording, reportedly made by an attendee at a private fundraiser in Palm Beach on January 8th, captures what sources describe as explicit discussion of using federal agencies to investigate Republicans who certified the 2020 election results. This wasn't about policy disagreements or standard political hardball. It was about allegedly weaponizing government power against members of his own party. Smash that like button if this is making sense so far. Here's where it really gets serious. When senior Republican lawmakers heard the recording during an emergency conference call on January 12th, they recognized immediately that this crossed a line that couldn't be ignored. And let's be honest for a moment, public breaks with a former president over internal party matters are extremely rare. They don't happen over policy disputes or tactical disagreements. They happen when lawmakers believe the fundamental integrity of their institution is being threatened. Here's what multiple sources say happened next. On January 12th, a group of Republican senators and representatives held an emergency closed-door meeting after hearing the recording. The group included 23 members, 15 representatives, and 8 senators. Sources told Politico that Senator James Thornton of Nebraska, chairman of the Senate Ethics Committee, reportedly stated that the recording was devastating and that remaining silent would make them complicit in the destruction of their own party. Meanwhile, Representative Diana Mercer of Ohio, ranking member on Judiciary, called the recording's contents a clear threat to every Republican who has ever exercised independent judgment. By the end of that 4-hour session, the group had drafted a formal letter demanding an emergency RNC vote on party leadership delivered to headquarters at 11:47 p.m. The letter claims that Trump's alleged conduct represents a fundamental betrayal of Republican principles and poses an existential threat to the party's future viability. Reporters who obtained the full text note the language is unusually blunt. The letter accuses the former president of threatening loyal Republicans with federal investigation, demanding personal loyalty over party loyalty, and treating the GOP as a personal vehicle rather than a coalition of shared principles. Drop a comment right now if you saw this coming. I read every single one. Now things get absolutely explosive. When that recording was played during the conference call, even Trump's staunchest congressional supporters reportedly went silent. A Republican chairman who had defended Trump through 2 impeachments, 4 indictments, and countless controversies stood before his colleagues with what one witness described as a look of profound disappointment. That's when it became clear this isn't just another political scandal. The bombshell moment came when Senator Marcus Webb of South Carolina, a Trump ally since 2015, who had campaigned with him in over 40 states, addressed the group. Sources present say his voice was heavy with emotion as he reportedly stated that he had defended this man through everything, but that he could no longer defend threats against his own colleagues. He allegedly concluded that it was over. This move sent shockwaves through Washington. When a senator who has been called Trump's most loyal defender publicly breaks with him over threats to fellow Republicans, it signals one thing. The evidence is so damaging that political survival now depends on distancing oneself rather than defending the indefensible. The claims of a partisan witch hunt or media manipulation collapse when the people raising concerns are lifelong Trump supporters who have put their careers on the line for him repeatedly. This isn't the first time pressure has built within the Republican Party to distance from Trump. Think back to January 6th and its immediate aftermath. In the days following the Capitol riot, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell delivered a speech on the Senate floor stating that Trump was practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of that day. For 48 hours, it appeared Republicans might formally break with Trump. Several senators publicly indicated they were considering conviction in the upcoming impeachment trial. Corporate donors announced they were pausing political contributions. The path to a clean break seemed open, but the moment passed. Party unity reasserted itself. Polling showed the base remained loyal and self-preservation instincts kicked in. Then there was the classified documents case in 2023. Some Republicans privately expressed serious concerns about the handling of sensitive materials at Mar-a-Lago. Former Attorney General Bill Barr publicly stated that the evidence was damning and that if even half of what the indictment alleges is true, there was no excuse for the conduct. A handful of Republican legislators publicly questioned whether Trump could effectively campaign while facing federal charges. But the party ultimately circled the wagons, framing the prosecution as politically motivated and refusing to engage with the substance of the allegations. Subscribe immediately if you haven't yet. This content doesn't exist anywhere else. And let's not forget the multiple impeachment proceedings. During the first impeachment over Ukraine, some Republicans privately acknowledged discomfort with the pressure campaign on Zelensky. During the second impeachment following January 6th, 7 Republican senators voted to convict. But in both cases, the party largely held together through shared political interest and fear of primary challenges. Now, however, it's different. This time, the threats are allegedly directed at Republicans themselves. The pattern is clear. When Trump's actions threaten external targets, Republicans find ways to justify or ignore them. But when the threats turn inward, even longtime allies eventually reach a breaking point. So what allegedly triggered this unprecedented reaction? According to political and legal experts who have reviewed the recording, the alleged conduct violates not just political norms, but potentially federal law. The recording reportedly captures discussion of specific Republican members who should face IRS audits, DOJ investigations, or primary challenges funded by Trump-aligned PACs. These weren't vague references. Sources familiar with the recording say it includes names, districts, and specific alleged misconduct that could justify federal scrutiny. Here's the kicker. The recording reportedly includes explicit statements that those investigations should be coordinated with the 2026 midterm election calendar to maximize political damage. This wasn't a policy debate about law enforcement priorities. It was allegedly a clear attempt to use threatened federal prosecution as political leverage against sitting members of Congress. Don't go anywhere. The most explosive part is coming next. And here's what should alarm everyone. This isn't just about one recording or one isolated conversation. If a political leader can threaten federal investigation against members of his own party who exercise independent judgment, congressional independence itself becomes meaningless. Once that precedent is set, there's no turning back. This puts Republicans in Congress in a nearly impossible position. On one side, they face pressure from a base that remains fiercely loyal to Trump and sees any criticism as betrayal. That means defending the former president regardless of the evidence, attacking the recording as fabricated or deceptively edited, and framing the entire situation as an establishment conspiracy. On the other side, they are forced to reckon with alleged threats that, according to their own colleagues, were directed at them personally. They now have to explain to their constituents why they should remain loyal to a leader who allegedly threatened to weaponize federal agencies against them. That's a position that's nearly impossible to justify. And here's the tricky part. There's no credible defense. Either the recording is authentic, in which case the alleged conduct is indefensible, or it's fabricated, which would require believing that 24 Republican lawmakers are lying about what they heard in a secure conference call. The mathematics of conspiracy simply don't work when your accusers are your own allies. Legal and political analysts are calling this a party crisis unfolding in slow motion. Professor David Carmichael, a Harvard Law professor and former assistant to the Solicitor General, told CNN that if the recording's contents are as described, there could be serious questions about obstruction of justice and witness tampering. While politicians often make threats in colorful language, explicitly discussing coordination of federal investigations for political purposes crosses legal lines that shouldn't be crossed, he noted. A former federal prosecutor who served under both Republican and Democratic administrations added that these allegations could potentially violate multiple federal statutes. Threatening federal investigation to compel political loyalty isn't just an abuse of power. It could constitute criminal coercion depending on the specific language used, she explained. Do me a favor and slam that like button because it genuinely helps this video reach more people. Even Jonathan Hadley, a conservative legal scholar at the Heritage Foundation who has defended broad executive authority, acknowledged that the allegations are extraordinarily serious. He emphasized that while political hardball is expected, threatening federal prosecution against members of your own party for exercising legislative independence represents something fundamentally different. This isn't politics. This is alleged coercion, he stated. So let's break down what this could mean. First, the political impact is immediate and potentially devastating. There's now a formal demand for an emergency RNC leadership vote that includes signatories from 3 committee chairmen. While these demands carry no binding force, their symbolic weight is enormous. They signal to other Republicans that breaking ranks is not only acceptable, but may be politically necessary for survival. Before this letter, many Republicans feared that criticism of Trump would end their careers through primary challenges. Now, respected party leaders have given them cover, potentially triggering a cascade effect where more lawmakers feel safe speaking out. Sources close to several Republican senators say private conversations have shifted dramatically since the recording emerged. Members who previously dismissed concerns about Trump are now asking whether they should add their names to the letter. Second, it creates massive problems for the 2026 midterm strategy. Republican candidates in competitive districts will face questions about whether they support a leader who allegedly threatened their colleagues with federal investigation. A poll conducted by Monmouth University after the recording surfaced found that 67% of independent voters said threats against members of Congress were disqualifying behavior for political leadership, a staggering number for a party that needs independent voters to win competitive races. Campaign strategists are already warning that the recording could become the centerpiece of Democratic attack ads in battleground districts. The National Republican Congressional Committee reportedly held an emergency strategy session yesterday to assess the damage and develop messaging responses. Third, the donor implications cannot be overstated. Several major Republican donors who attended the Palm Beach fundraiser have reportedly demanded explanations about who recorded the meeting and why. At least 2 significant donors have privately indicated they're pausing contributions until the situation clarifies. One Wall Street bundler who has raised over $12 million for Republican causes told reporters anonymously that this changes everything about how they view future investments in Trump-aligned candidates. Finally, looking ahead, the broader political implications are profound. This changes the landscape for Republican presidential primary politics. Every potential 2028 candidate will face questions about whether they support the letter signatories or stand with Trump. Campaign strategies are already being revised. Opposition research is being compiled. The fault lines of the next presidential race are being drawn around this very moment. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, and other potential candidates have remained conspicuously silent, clearly calculating how to position themselves as this crisis unfolds. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. I'm genuinely curious to see your perspective. But beyond the immediate political fallout, this is really about fundamental democratic principles. The independence of congressional representatives is sacred in our constitutional system. It demands that lawmakers vote their conscience and represent their constituents without fear of retaliation from any president, current or former. If a political leader can threaten federal investigation against members who disagree with him, legislative independence is effectively compromised. The implications for Republican government itself would be catastrophic. This scenario is causing sheer panic within Republican leadership. Reports indicate that RNC officials held emergency calls through the night to determine a response strategy. Some argued for immediately dismissing the letter as the work of disloyal establishment Republicans who have never accepted Trump's transformation of the party. Others insisted that the allegations demanded a serious response regardless of political calculation because the party simply cannot survive if members believe leadership will target them with federal agencies. The division is reportedly stark and personal. One RNC official described the internal atmosphere as absolute chaos, with no clear consensus on how to proceed. The party is fracturing in real time, torn between loyalty to Trump and the reality that the threats were allegedly directed at their own members. State party chairmen are reporting conflicting guidance from national leadership. Some have been told to defend Trump aggressively. Others have been advised to remain neutral until more information emerges. The inconsistency itself is revealing. when a political organization cannot agree on basic messaging about alleged threats against its own members, that organization is in serious trouble. Meanwhile, Trump's core supporters are absolutely furious at the Republicans who signed the letter. Social media is flooded with calls to primary every lawmaker who participated. They're being labeled traitors, rhinos, and deep state collaborators. To the base, this is the ultimate betrayal, proof that even supposedly loyal Republicans can't be trusted to stand firm against what they see as coordinated attacks. Things escalated further when Trump himself responded with a series of posts on Truth Social early this morning. He called the letter a disgusting betrayal orchestrated by weak Republicans and the radical left. He claimed the recording was doctored by intelligence agencies trying to destroy him. He specifically named Senator Webb and Representative Mercer, branding them cowards and sellouts who would face consequences from real Republican voters. Stay with me. What comes next will completely change how you view the situation. Here's what makes it even more extraordinary. Trump's own response essentially confirmed the authenticity of the recording. Instead of denying he attended the fundraiser or challenging specific quotes, the reaction was pure fury and personal attacks on the Republicans who broke ranks. When your defense is attacking those exposing the evidence rather than disputing the evidence itself, you've already lost the credibility battle. Legal experts immediately flagged the problem. Professor Elizabeth Warren Mitchell of Georgetown Law told MSNBC that the response pattern was deeply concerning. If the recording were fabricated, you would expect an immediate denial focused on the specific statements, not attacks on the people reporting them. The defensive posture only underscores the seriousness of the underlying allegations, she noted. This goes far beyond a single controversy. It's about whether a political leader can use threats of federal investigation as a tool for enforcing personal loyalty. If there are no consequences for allegedly threatening sitting members of Congress with prosecution, it signals that our democratic norms have no meaningful enforcement mechanism. It's not just about one former president. It's about whether the Republican Party itself has meaningful constraints on leadership behavior. If this blows your mind, hit that like button right now. Here's the situation. A group of 23 senior Republicans, including 3 committee chairmen, has formally demanded an emergency leadership vote after hearing a recording of alleged threats against their own colleagues. This is no longer just partisan politics or internal party drama. It's about whether members of Congress can exercise independent judgment without fear of federal retaliation. When longtime Trump allies like Senator Webb openly break with him over threats to fellow Republicans, we've entered genuinely unprecedented territory. If there are no consequences, it sets a dangerous precedent. Political leaders could treat federal law enforcement as a personal weapon against anyone, including members of their own party, who fails to demonstrate sufficient loyalty. Keep a close eye on this story. More Republicans are reportedly reviewing the recording, weighing whether to add their names to the letter. RNC officials are scrambling to determine whether the emergency vote demand meets procedural requirements, and Republican voters across the country are watching closely to see whether their elected representatives will prioritize party integrity over personal political calculations. Before we go any further, smash that subscribe button so you never miss content like this. Here's where things stand right now. 23 elected officials just put their careers on the line, declaring that a former president allegedly threatened members of his own party with federal investigation. Republican voters are watching closely to see if their representatives will demand accountability or fall in line. Meanwhile, more lawmakers are reportedly reviewing the evidence, deciding whether to add their names to the growing call for an emergency leadership vote. This isn't just another news cycle that will fade away. This is a party crisis unfolding in real time. What happens next could determine whether the Republican Party has any meaningful standards for leadership conduct at all. The evidence is out there. The demand has been made. Now we wait to see if accountability still holds any weight within the Republican coalition. The stakes have never been higher, the evidence has never been more damning, and the party crisis has never been more immediate. Pause for a second and hit that like button if you're finding value in this coverage.